Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're going to completely flip the script on those outdated, high-stress evaluation models and equip you with some actionable frameworks built specifically for the 2026 hybrid workplace. If you're tired of team check-ins that feel more like a courtroom trial than a collaboration, you are in exactly the right place.
Here's our roadmap for today. We're looking at the pressure to perform, why you're already vetted, the death of the appraisal, the Harvard feedback framework, mastering empathetic inquiry, and finally, the continuous growth loop. Let's just jump right in. Part 1, the pressure to perform and that all too familiar anxiety of evaluation.
So I want you to be really honest with yourself here. When was the last time you sat through a performance review and actually felt excited? Yeah, probably never, right? For most of us, it kind of feels like being called down to the principal's office. You get handed this completely arbitrary 3 out of 5 score, someone says you meet expectations, and you just walk out thinking, what am I even supposed to do with that? And hey, if you're the manager giving the review, you probably hate the whole shebang just as much. You're not a professional critic, you know? You're just a human trying to help your team grow. Moving on to section 2. You are already vetted and the onboarding shift. Because this pressure we're talking about, it actually starts building on literally day 1. Leadership expert Simon Sinek points out this massive trap that almost all new hires fall right into. He says, when someone gives you a job, you suddenly feel this immense pressure to prove yourself. But here's the thing, you don't have to. You've already been vetted. Somebody looked at your credentials, interviewed you, and said, yup, they're the one. But instead of resting on that, new employees constantly feel like they have to chime in to every single meeting just to prove the company didn't make a huge mistake. But honestly, we already know you're smart. That's literally why you're here. To combat this exact anxiety, the luxury brand Chanel does something super fascinating. They have a strict 90-day rule. They explicitly prohibit new senior executives from speaking in meetings for their first 90 days. Literally, they just want you to sit there, shut up, and listen. It sounds intense, but by enforcing this 90-day silence, they're giving new hires permission to drop that exhausting need to perform. You just get to absorb the culture instead. All right, section 3, death of the appraisal, and why the old way is just completely broken. So if we know that new hires shouldn't be endlessly judged, why on earth are we still doing it to our tenured employees? The old way, that once-a-year, top-down, 1 to 5 scoring system, it's just a fossil. We're in 2026 now. Work is hybrid, it's deeply asynchronous, it's collaborative. Slapping a rigid score on someone based on what they did 6 months ago, it tells you absolutely nothing about how they're doing today. It's like judging a soccer player's entire season off of one muddy game they played last March. It makes no sense. We have to shift from being a top-down critic on a pedestal to a high-performance coach who's actually down on the field with the team. And the biology behind this is wild. When someone feels judged during a review, they literally experience what's called an amygdala hijack. Their amygdala, that's the brain's fight-or-flight center, just lights up. Cortisol spikes. At that point, they're not really listening to your feedback anymore. They're defending themselves, shutting down, or just quietly resenting you. So the ultimate tragic irony here is that the exact tool we use to try and improve performance actually makes them biologically incapable of learning. Which brings us to section 4, the Harvard feedback framework, and separating the conversations. To fix this biological stress response, we look to the Harvard Negotiation Project. And get this, these are the exact same folks who taught the FBI how to handle hostage negotiations. So yeah, they know a little something about de-escalating stress. They break feedback down into 3 distinct buckets. First, appreciation, literally just saying, hey, I see your effort. Then coaching, here's a way to get even better. And finally, evaluation, here's where you stand against the standard. Managers create so much unnecessary drama by trying to do all 3 of these at the exact same time. Think about it. Great job on the report, but you need more details, so I'm giving you a 3. It gives people whiplash. You absolutely have to separate the person from the problem. Just check out this stat. Simply by naming the type of conversation right up front, just saying, hey, this is a coaching chat today, not an evaluation, you can drop a person's stress levels by about 80%. 80%! All of a sudden, you're both sitting on the same side of the table looking at a problem together. That builds psychological safety, which is quite literally the foundation for real growth. Moving to section 5, mastering empathetic inquiry. Because curiosity really has to win over criticism. This is the core skill that separates the great coaches from the judges. A lot of managers just throw out blunt statements, right? You missed the deadline, or this presentation lacked clarity. Those are accusations, and accusations immediately build defensive walls. Instead, you've got to lean into open-ended, curiosity-driven questions. Try saying, "Help me understand what happened with the deadline," or "What was the biggest obstacle you faced here?" Notice the difference? You're not pointing fingers, you're investigating the why right alongside them.
And that brings us to what is arguably the single most powerful phrase in a manager's toolkit. What am I missing here? Using those 5 words is a total game changer. It lets you validate their perspective without necessarily excusing a bad outcome. Like if they say they were late because another team dropped the ball, you can validate that frustration without saying the missed deadline was totally fine. Validating just means you respect them. And when people feel respected, those defensive walls come down. All right, final section, number 6, the continuous growth loop and pulse-based evolution. This is where the rubber meets the road. Because a great coaching chat with 0 follow-up, that's really just a nice conversation. We have to ditch the annual trauma review. Doing a review once a year is like going to the gym every January 1st and wondering why you aren't fit. It takes consistency. So implement what we call micro check-ins, 15 minutes, weekly or bi-weekly. During that time, agree on 1 or 2 tiny, hyper-specific actions. Not some vague corporate fluff like be more proactive, but something real, like send me 1 idea to fix our handoff process by Friday. Then, schedule a quick follow-up. That is how you create actual, measurable evolution.
So, what does this look like in the wild? Say you have an employee who keeps showing up late. The old school critic says, "You're late, it's unprofessional, it's going on your permanent record." The employee feels attacked, and frankly, nothing really changes. But the new school coach, they say, "Hey, not evaluating you today, just coaching. What's getting in the way of our start time?" And then the employee reveals that their 10 a.m. meeting clashes with their kid's school drop-off. Boom! Now you have a diagnosed constraint. As a coach, you shift their schedule by 15 minutes or let them catch up asynchronously. No shaming, no arbitrary scores, just 2 adults co-creating a functional solution.
I want to leave you with a challenge for your very next team check-in. Instead of delivering a one-way critique, ask your team member this one single powerful question. What is one thing I could do to support you better? And then, actually listen to the answer. When your team feels like they're being coached rather than judged, they're going to take risks, they're going to speak up, and they'll innovate without the fear of getting a bad grade. So try it out and watch it absolutely transform your team. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.